Rounding out the AFC East divisional team previews, we're going to be covering Dolphins, Pats. We've already hit on the Bills. We've already hit on the Jets. You can check out those podcasts with some of our team hosts, Andy Mack at Bills Up. Check out James over at Jet Up. Great previews. We're actually going to cover Dolphins and Pats on this one here. Rob, thanks for hopping on, man. Are you ready to finish off this AFC East?
Yeah, baby. AFC East. My Jets hopefully get a good year this year. A lot to be excited about, but we're not talking about the Jets on this one. Talking about the Dolphins. So let's kick it off.
Screw it. Let's just make it Jet Up round 2, right?
Yeah, who cares about the other teams, right? We don't have anyone listening.
Whoa, who said that? What kind of company is this? What is this? No, we're here to talk Dolphins, Pats. That's the good part about this show. It's the Around the NFL show. We keep it unbiased here, except for that opener, which was terribly biased. But let's keep rolling with the Dolphins here, Rob. I'm excited to kind of preview a couple of these teams. We don't really have anyone that's hosting shows for them, so it's you and I getting to break them down. And we're going to be talking a little bit of Tua, right? Is it finally Tua time? Why wasn't it last year? Where did he improve? Where he didn't? And honestly, there's a couple things when you look at last year, he still seemed to be struggling potentially with some injuries. We're going to get into a couple of metrics that his receivers struggled with. But one thing I'm looking for out of the Dolphins under this new regime is, can they actually exceed mediocrity? They always seem to have some level of talent. And you mentioned before the show, this feels like an entirely new offense. We're going to see how Mike McDaniels puts it together in his first year at the helm, coming over from San Francisco. So that's going to be interesting, number one. Number two is, regardless of who's the coach, can this team exceed mediocrity? That remains to be seen. A lot of it depends on Tua, but not just Tua. I think the scheme matters. And how healthy is he? Can he stay healthy? And how did this offense impact him last season? Something that really stuck out to us is his receivers over the last couple of seasons ranked dead last in creating separation on their yards down the field, right? This forced Tua to rank top 6 in aggressiveness, not because Tua was actually aggressive throwing the ball. It was because his receivers were terrible. Just absolutely abysmal. So with that said, I kind of want to toss it to you to talk about some of the additions that they made. Some of you guys like Devonte Parker are gone. We got, outside of Jalen Waddle, a couple new additions, including a big name. Talk to me about Tua. Talk to me about these additions and how they can potentially improve their outlook for 2022.
Yeah, so this is actually my fault. I gave you some misinformation here. Tua did rank top 6 in aggressiveness, but it was actually, he was number 1. So it was Tua and Fitzpatrick were top 6 combined. Tua was the worst of the two, who ranked number 1 in aggressiveness, which is not where you want to be. And again, that is a large part due to his receivers not creating separation. Like you said, past couple years, someone that sticks out to me, who I thought, on paper looks, pretty good. Devonte Parker ranked in the dead last in 2020 and 2021. I think it was like 127th overall and 130th, whatever it is. He ranked dead last in separation. So that's tough to work with. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, so it seems. Adding Cedrick Wilson, adding Tyreek Hill, a game changer, and then bringing back Jalen Waddle, who proved to be an awesome addition to their team last year as a rookie. Between Cedrick Wilson, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle, they were all top 3. All 3 were top 35 in creating separation over the last year. So that's a big, big, big upgrade. I mean, you go from your number 1 receiver, or who is supposed to be your number 1 receiver, in Devonte Parker, who ranks dead last in the league in separation, which skyrockets to his aggressiveness. Now you improve it to, okay, now all 3 of my guys were in the top 35 in the NFL. This is a massive, massive improvement. I think that helps Tua, obviously helps the Dolphins, obviously helps Tua. I think this is probably the most explosive wide receiver core in the NFL. And I don't really see how you can argue. And I'm not talking about explosive as, they might not be the most talented, but they're certainly up there. They are certainly the fastest wide receiver core in the league, which to me screams explosiveness. So if they can create a little separation, if Tua is the quarterback that Tyreek Hill is saying he is in training camp, that he's more accurate than Patrick Mahomes when given that separation. This could be a scary looking offense. I'm not the biggest believer in Tua, but if this pans out and these guys and Tyreek Hill can be Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle can, get a little even more separation now that he's not the main focus on this offense, this can be a really difficult team to stop and a really difficult team to scheme around defensively. So very fun to watch. I'm excited for it. A little nervous for it as a Jets fan, but again, that's not what this is about. Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait to see if Tua actually shows that he's the real deal.
The other thing that they've really struggled with is pass block win rate. They've actually been dead last. So, to your point about not only creating separation down the field, he's had a terrible success rate against pressure, right? And so I want to see, does that offensive line improve with some of the additions? They added a couple pieces, but they were more reserve pieces, like Connor Williams comes over to them. How impactful is that going to be, the offensive line? They've been bottom 3 for a couple of years now, and that's going to feed into your quarterbacks performing poorly against a high pressure rate. Ryan Fitzpatrick had that solid season, performed well. Tua is a 75% success rate without it. And like you said, 24% against pressure. That's a problem. You got to shore up that line, because if he's holding the ball for 3.5 seconds to get the ball downfield to Tyreek, it doesn't matter how many videos you put on Instagram or Twitter. Like, if he's getting hit before he can chuck the ball 40 yards downfield, then that's a problem. So I do think they're going to try to get the ball out of his hands quickly because of all his med. They can create that separation. These are guys that can create a lot of yards after catch. So that should benefit, but they are going to have to shore up this line. You mentioned it's just an average strength of schedule for them. They should be able to, 7 wins should be the floor for this team. With an average strength of schedule, I do think 7 wins is the floor. They're projected for 8.5. When you look at that win total, what are your thoughts? Are they hitting it?
It's so tough. It's really so tough because it all depends, I think. And there's so many teams you can say that about this year. It really depends on the quarterback. The pieces are around them. We just talked about the Eagles. The pieces are around Jalen Hurts. Just talked about the Jets. The pieces are around Zach Wilson. Now we talk about the Dolphins. All the pieces are there for Tua to succeed. So it's on him. You got Hill, you got Cedrick Wilson, you got Waddle, Gesicki. That's as good as it's going to get. Now you add Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert in that backfield. Those are 2 proven running backs to have at least been solid. So 8.5 is a high number, especially in the division that you look at the Dolphins and you say maybe it's a toss-up between them and the Patriots. I think pretty much everyone has the Bills running away with this division, but who knows? Really, who knows? Division games get weird. But just looking at their schedule now, you open up with the Patriots, Ravens, Bills, and Super Bowl contender Bengals before you get to the Jets, which most would consider like maybe an easier game. But who knows? By week 5, the Jets might have started to figure some stuff out. We don't know. So it's hard for me to look at that schedule and see a lot of difficulty and say these guys are going to overachieve on that win total of 8.5. My prediction, unfortunately, again, I'll bring the Jets bias into it. I think the Bills are going to win the division. I think the Patriots and Dolphins are going to be neck and neck. But if that's the case, how do you really get to 8.5, 9 wins? So my prediction is more in the 7 range, 6-7 range. But again, anything can happen. Division games are weird. I don't see anyone passing Buffalo this year. But there certainly is some winnable games right in the middle of the season, which is good. I think where you kind of start to figure things out. You got the Steelers, you got the Lions, the Bears, the Browns, the Texans. Those are very winnable games for the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could start figuring things out in that 6, 7, 8 week stride to bring it onto the back half where you got the Niners, Chargers, Bills, Packers, Patriots again, you might be able to squeak out some of those more difficult wins, which will obviously raise that win total and maybe surpass it if you take the over. But it's a pretty tough schedule. It is ranked middle of the pack, but looking at it on paper, it is pretty tough.
This is an organization that historically flirts with 500. They've proven that to me. That's almost what I expect at this point until they prove me otherwise. I think there's some real positive signs here, but they've proven to float around 500. So I do think they sit right around that mark. We'll see how Mike McDaniels adjusts with some of these weapons, but someone that has consistently exceeded that mark is Bill Belichick in New England. That's going to be the second team we're talking about here is the New England Patriots. We want to provide a preview on them and some very unique stats, like metrics that don't even make sense. And you look at them, you're like, my God, how has this team actually won as many games as it has? This is a team that outside of the Cam Newton year where they won about 7 games has double-digit wins every year since 2003, right? They're projected for about 8.5 last year. Projections are your say to a point, but there've been someone that's exceeded it, and they've been in the playoffs for they had an 11 straight year run to the playoffs as well. Outside of the Cam and the Matt Castle year, like these guys are in the playoffs, even last year, getting to that 11 win mark. So talk to me about your expectations for the Patriots and even a couple of these crazy metrics that seem to just surround Bill Belichick at all times and now Mac Jones.
Well, it's very similar to my points about the Dolphins I just made. And I don't think that's a surprise where I said, Bills are my clear one. Dolphins, Patriots toss up 2-3. With the Jets hopefully squeaking in there as I put another Jets plug in there. But it's bizarre. I mean, the guy knows how to win. And I know he had Brady forever. So it's easy to say, Brady was, the driver of that bus. But at the end of the day, like you get a rookie in Mac Jones and you go right back to a 10-win team, right back to the playoffs. It's like the biggest nightmare of anyone else as a fan of the AFC East, because you think, oh, we finally, Brady's finally gone. We finally have, a little edge on the Patriots maybe. And then they get Mac Jones and it's like, oh, this guy's 21 years old and he fits perfectly into our system. Perfect. Now we have a quarterback for the next 15 years. So that's very frustrating as an AFC East fan of another team. But I mean, you got to give them credit. They do, they make changes and make adjustments according to the players that need to fit those roles. And Mac Jones did it perfectly last year. He ran into some trouble in the playoffs there against the Bills, but what can you really do? I mean, it's like I'm almost at a loss for words because the first notes of our, what we're looking at here as data is like, it's not fair. It's truly not fair what they're able to do year in and year out. I mean, like you said, double-digit games, double-digit wins since, 2003 to 2020, besides that Cam year, and sitting at 8.5 wins, the over and under. I mean, Belichick, if you look at his last 5 seasons, again, excluding that Cam year in 2020, he has surpassed the over in every year. So you almost have to bet on them because they're just that good every year. We'll see what happens. I mean, they did add Devonte Parker, who I just kind of bashed a few minutes ago with the Dolphins. So I'm not sure that's the answer for them at receiver. Maybe Belichick, will be able to scheme up some stuff for him to create a little bit more separation, or maybe he'll just go up and get those 50-50 balls. But usually with young quarterbacks, you want your number one option to create some separation. So another fun stat regarding their receiving core is they actually are the most expensive receiving core in 2022, which you wouldn't think. I can't even name 2 guys on their receiving core. I mean, Devonte Parker, obviously, but after that, it's like, who the heck are these guys paying? They're $72.2 million is their how much their receiving room cost in 2022, which is $20 million more than the second highest. And you wouldn't even believe who the second highest is. It's the Jaguars. So it's like, where are these players coming from that are getting paid so much? But it's just so bizarre. I'm sure the Patriots will make it work. I'm sure we're not going to look at this next year and say Devonte Parker was dead last in separation. They're going to figure it out somehow. So I'm excited to see it. I think their strength of schedule is, just looking at it, the eye test, I think it is a little lighter than the Dolphins. So I could definitely see them finishing higher. But again, those division games are toss-ups and you just never know.
So some of what you ran through there is exactly why you look at the Pats and Belichick and you're like, how are they this consistently dominating? I mean, it has to be like so frustrating to be in that division and watch them do this, or be in the AFC in general, like even to watch them get into the playoffs last year. The other thing Belichick tends to do, not only does he just does the opposite of whatever the league does. Everyone wants yards after catch guys and guys that create separation. And he's like, and they want to throw the ball. And he's like, you know what? Screw this. Let me just run the ball, well over 50% of the time and go sign the guy that's dead last in separation and still make the playoffs. I don't know why he chooses to do that. And also overpay these dudes. So basically we got Devonte Parker and Christian Kirk leading abysmal receiving rooms who are the top two highest paid ones in the NFL. And we got people over here stunned at like Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams contracts. Like, what are these guys doing? But at the end of the day, like, if I'm picking between the Dolphins and Pats, if I'm picking someone to go over 8.5 wins on paper, like the Dolphins should absolutely annihilate them. But based off of what we talked about here, we're just like, I mean, you going to bet against Belichick? Because I'm not. Like, who's going to be the one? What organization is going to actually exceed expectations? So, honestly, these two teams are very unique on paper. They should be flipped at the end of the season, but they never seem to be. They did lose some defensive players such as J.C. Jackson and Shaq Mason. I think Dante Hightower is still unsigned, who was really a Swiss Army knife for them. And I believe one of their, like Kyle Van Noy, also went to the Chargers with J.C. Jackson. So, they've lost some players there. But I think Belichick figures it out, at least on the defensive side. It's a lot of these other things that leave you scratching your head going, how in the world do they continue to find success? And for whatever reason, he took Mac Jones and made him successful. He just does it. And it's kind of an incredible thing to look at when you get to the end of the season. You're like, there he is in the hunt they were in the hunt for the division last year, not just the wild card, but they're for a couple weeks, it was like they're legit in the hunt for the division until Buffalo shut that crap down. So it'll definitely interesting to watch them move forward. I don't know if you got any final thoughts before we wrap up here on the Patriots.
No, I think, it would be so fun to see like an alternate reality where a Zach Wilson or a Trevor Lawrence went to the Patriots instead, just to see if it would pan out, because is it really the players' talent, or is it the coach just putting them in the right situation? I think most of the time it's probably the coach putting them in the right situation. We've seen guys that really hadn't succeeded to an extremely high level go into better systems and then they figure it out. So we'll see. I mean, I'm excited. I'm pumped up for the AFC East, just pumped up for football in general. But yeah, this little little Dolphins Patriots pod. I don't know if you could find two teams in the NFL that are kind of projected to finish closer, and that actually might finish just as close as each other. So I know you look at, the AFC West with like the Broncos and the Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, and you think like, 3 out of 4 of these teams should probably make the playoffs. You could very well say that about the AFC East, where the Bills, Patriots, and Dolphins all have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs, and all legitimately could make the playoffs, depending how the AFC plays out. So again, we'll see. I'm excited for it. Can't wait. Go Jets, baby.
So, like, before we wrap up, a couple of things about this pod. No bias was truly left out of here. You literally said I gave you some misinformation beforehand. I mean, do we are we trusted by listeners at this point? I don't even know.
Honestly, if anything, we should be more trusted by listeners at this point after today, because I picked my Jets to finish 4th in that division. So it's like, yeah, I want them to finish first, but realistically, am I expecting that? No. I just picked these other 3 teams to potentially make the playoffs. So I say screw the bias questionable people out there. We are not biased whatsoever. Go listen to the Eagles pod. You bash your own team too.
That'll be coming out later this week. You guys can check that out. Thanks for joining us here as we wrapped up the AFC East. The NFC East is rolling out towards the back half of this week. So you guys keep tuning in. We got plenty more content covering every team this month. Thanks for joining us here on the Around the League podcast.